Hello and welcome back to the Yarns and Brews podcast. I am Amanda. Thank you for tuning back in or tuning in if you are a new viewer. I greatly appreciate your support over here. So I know it's been a couple months since I podcasted. I think it's been a little over 2 to be exact. And that's a couple of reasons. One of which is I started a new job. And then the second is I started school. And then the third reason is I've just kind of had a difficult time, I guess, going through with filming when there's so many other things going on in the world. I think I am challenged sometimes to just live my life. And I know there's just so much suffering and conflict going on out there. So I've just really kind of been battling with that and kind of waiting for a more appropriate time to do so. So with that, I am back. So thank you again for coming back after my long hiatus. So I guess we'll just start off, go into finished objects. I don't have a lot to show because I do feel like I've been focusing more time on the other things that I just mentioned, so school and work. But I did finish this t-shirt, which was not shown on any previous podcast. This is the Spring Sorrel Tee, I guess. I think it's just Spring Sorrel by Wallin Pine. And I knitted up in the Malabrigo Arroyo yarn in the colorway Immortal. And I really love this yarn. I alternated skeins the entire way through to make sure that it was pretty cohesive because Malabrigo, even if you get the same dye lot, sometimes has a tendency to pool or to be completely different because it is kettle dyed. So I just went ahead and I alternated. I think it just took a little over 2 skeins. So it was a very affordable, t-shirt, and I just really like the color. I think it's not super me, but it's very spring-like and vibrant, and it reminds me of the Chicago River when they dye it green for St. Patrick's Day. So that's pretty much all I have to say about it. It has a beautiful detail here on the yoke, but the rest of the sweater, I'll stand up. The rest of the sweater, is plain knit down to the bottom, and then I think it's like a 2x1. It's either 2x1 twisted rib or it's a 2x1 rib. I can't remember, but yeah, that is the Spring Sorrel. So that's my first finished object, and I have a couple more. So the first one is my Lily, which is a Marie Wallin pattern, and this is knit out of Rowan Felted Tweed, and it is all the colorways that are recommended in the pattern. And so for this sweater, I did transition to knitting in the round instead of knitting flat because that's just what I do with Marie's patterns. I think that if I were to knit it again, I'd probably take a little bit of the ease out because it is just slightly big on me, and I'm not sure if that's because it grew. This blend of yarn does have a little bit of alpaca in that, so it is, a little bit more drapey than the average. Or if my gauge was off because I don't gauge swatch. So hard to know, but I did have to make a few different little modifications towards the end because of the gauge issues that I was experiencing. So one of those changes was there was a pattern repeat in here. It was this green checked area, or not checked, sorry, this is like X's and O's, I think, down here. It was this, was here on the ribbing, but after I tried it on and blocked it, I didn't like where it was hitting me. It was like right in the crease of my elbow. So what I ended up doing is picking up stitches on either side of that, and then I removed that section, and then I grafted the two together with just this, I believe it was the stone colorway. I just did one plain row of grafting with that. So now it hits me just, slightly above the elbow, and so it's pretty perfect where it hits. The other thing I had to learn for this project, it was nice to learn something for a change. I had to learn how to crochet, and not only that, I had to learn how to crochet English style, because there are differences between English and American crocheting. So I ended up having to rip this out 2 or 3 times just to make sure it was absolutely perfect, but that's what that looks like close up. So I did make modifications. So in this little chain repeat area here, normally I think I took 2 chains out of that for each section. So everywhere that it connected, I just removed 2. So I'm pretty happy with the final outcome. Again, I'm considering doing something to modify the size because it is a little bit too baggy on me. So I might end up steeking it or something like that to make it just fit a little bit better. But it was a fun project and I'm glad it's done. So I am entering this into the Knitting with Cat Hair make-along. It's a year of Marie Wallin Mal, I believe. Don't quote me on that. Go visit her podcast because she's great. But she started to make along back in August of 2021, and it's running, I think, all the way through August of 2022. So that is my Lily. And then my next finished object that I have, and this is the final knitting finished object to show, is just these pair of fun socks. So this is just a pattern that I made up. I saw this skein. I've never used Spincycle yarn, but this is Spincycle, and I don't remember the colorway, but it's on my Ravelry, and I'll put it down below in case you're interested. But I saw this skein and it just kind of made me happy. I'm always into like unicorn type colors and cheerful colors, so I ended up picking this up on a trip that I was on, and then this was just a mini of Manos del Uruguay. I think the colorway was Juanita on that. So I just made up this simple pattern because I thought the colors went together really well. So these are just for me. And then for whips, I am still working on my Damjakka Loppa, but I have gotten a little bit further, I think, since the last podcast. So I added on the button band here. I have not steeked yet. I think I'm going to end up felting it a little bit just to ensure that the yarn holds. I'm pretty sure that it will. This yarn is, I've talked about it before in other podcasts, but this yarn is Fiber Company. I think it's Cumbria fingering, and it has just like mohair and wool in it, so it should stick pretty well. But I always like to felt my steeks because I do think that they just kind of become a little bit more cohesive after that. So I'm done with the button band, and I also picked out buttons for it. I ended up picking out these buttons, which are like a brass button with leather lining in them. I just thought it would look really nice against this, project. So hopefully I can get this done. The sleeves are really, they're a problem for me, as are most sleeves. So hopefully I can put a little bit more energy into this project and get it off the needle, since it's been on for like the better part of 2 years now. So the next project I would like to show you is my Eldora. This is another Marie Wallin pattern, and it is out of the Rowan magazine number 55. So it is the one here on this cover. I really like the colors that this comes in, but there's a lot that comes in each skein, and I think there's like 8 or 9 colors that are in this pattern, and I didn't want a ton of extra leftovers. So I went with a more local to me yarn, which is the Pacolet Valley Fiber Company, and it's all grown, processed, packaged, spun, dyed in the United States. So that is the yarn. Yeah, and then it comes in like really small cakes too, so I thought it was really nice for a colorwork project like this, where you have a ton of colors and then hopefully I don't have a ton of leftovers. So I am knitting this one flat in 2 pieces instead of in the round, and it's not too tedious. So that is my Eldora sweater. And then I've had some castonitis, unfortunately, which you're probably going to gather from this whip section. But I also casted on a Felix sweater. And you may recognize this as a sweater that I had on in previous episodes. But unfortunately, this is a new sweater. My previous sweater, unfortunately, I lost in a hike in the Shenandoah National Park. I was climbing up this crazy path and I took it out at the top because it was really windy and cold. So I had it on when I was at the top of the mountain. And then as I was climbing down the mountain, I had taken it off and shoved it in my backpack. And I went down a different route than the way I came up because I was going up rock scrambles. I really didn't want to go down that way because it took me a while and I was on a little bit of a time crunch. So I was like, well, I'll go down a different path. Even though it's longer, I can make up time because it's flatter. I can just run. So I was like running through the park and all of a sudden my backpack, the contents of my backpack just fall out. And so I kind of looked around. I was surprised by it. It must not have been fully zipped at the top is what I'm guessing. And my sweater was at the very top of that. And at the time it didn't register, but I shoved everything back in my backpack. I walked back on the trail about 25 to 50 feet. Didn't see anything else. And so I was like, okay, I must have gotten it all. And then I got back to my car, drove to the hotel I was staying at, which is about 2 hours away from the park. And when I got back, that's when I realized that my sweater was missing. So I called the park, I submitted lost and found. I didn't receive any contact in it. So I ended up ordering the last skeins of yarn from Green Mountain Spinnery. This was a limited edition yarn that they had made a couple years ago. So I got the last 4 skeins. I had 1 partial skein in my stash and I've run out of yarn. So I'm almost done with it. I'm very close to the ribbing, but I have run out of yarn. So trying to make a decision on what to do. I knit my mom a shawl out of the same yarn a couple years ago. So I asked if she would be okay if she sent it to me and I could use that yarn in this project. And in return, I'll make her something better. So I think that's what's going to happen. Unfortunately, I couldn't find anyone that had a scrap of this yarn in their Ravelry stash or anything like that. So I think I'm gonna have to frog another project in order to save a project. But it was unfortunate. This is my favorite color of green and I really loved that sweater. So hopefully somebody found it and is loving it, but if not, hopefully a critter found it and is nice and toasty warm. But it just made me feel really terrible about leaving something out there in the park. But at least it's wool, 100%. So yeah, kind of is what it is at this point. But this is the Felix sweater by Amy Christoffers. And the yarn is Green Mountain Spinnery in the limited edition. It doesn't even matter because you can't get the yarn anywhere, but it's like a limited edition wool blend. And then the last project I have to show you today is the Metamorphic by Andrea Mowrey. And I also decided to cast this on. I am knitting it out of Ulysse yarn and my own handspun. So this is my handspun cake and it is Hello Yarn in the colorway Freeze and Thaw. So I'm getting there on this one. Of course, I'll probably get stuck on Sleeve Island like half my other sweaters, but oh well. So when I was up in the Shenandoahs, I was staying like in the Washington, D.C. area. So I ended up going to the yarn shops in Arlington and in Washington, D.C. And I've never been to the one in Arlington. It was called Fiberspace. That yarn shop was amazing. It had so many different yarns that I've never tried before. So I got the Ulysses there. I ended up getting Knitting for Olive 100% silk. I got the Spincycle that I knit these socks out of there. It was just a really great shop, and I really haven't been to a yarn shop in a while, so it was nice to be able to go there. In March, I got to go to Carolina Fiber Festival in Raleigh, and that was nice because that hasn't been hosted in person since I believe it was 2019, because 2020 was canceled, because that was like right at the moment that they shut down the state. So I got to pick up a few things there. I ended up buying mostly fiber there. I got a couple skeins of yarn, but only because they were like different breeds for me, like Frisian. I got a skein of like a Frisian blend, and I got a skein of Gulf Coast Native, and I think one of Tunis as well. So more of like the rare conservancy breeds of sheep. In addition to that, I got a bag of fiber, Icelandic fiber that was just dyed in the lock, and I ended up getting a blending board and making my own Rolegs. So this is what that blended up to be. I made several of them. So yeah, I had a really good time there. It was tempting to buy a spinning wheel. I was so close, but I did not do it. I just held off. I'm really in the market for a Kromsky minstrel, and thankfully the one that they had there sold the day before I got there. Otherwise, I'm pretty sure I probably would have had a Kromsky minstrel. The last work in progress I have is this tank top by My Favorite Knitwear. I think it's like tank number 4 by them, and it's a knitting for olive 100% silk. So this is kind of what it's turning out to be. This is a really fun pattern to knit, pretty relaxing and addictive. As far as spinning goes, I'm not going to talk about all of it because I can't even remember what I've spun and what I've shared and what I haven't. So I will just talk about the ones that I have beside me. But I spun up these 2 lovely skeins of little houses, which was a Hello Yarn club colorway, I believe from 2021. And this is on eider wool, which is a coarser wool than I'm used to spinning. And I really, really liked, I liked spinning it, and I liked the result, like what I got out of it. So I think I have one more braid of this, and I think I'm gonna try to put it in a sweater depending upon how much yardage I get out of that one. But I think currently between the 2, I'm around 800-ish. The next one I spun up was this pretty skein of wound up fiber art. This is 100% non-superwash Polworth. And I like the way that this one came up. It actually reminds me a lot of a club colorway from Hello Yarn that I really loved, called Moon, and that was on BFL. So this one's just has a little bit softer hand to it, but nonetheless, they are both like very, very similar. And so I might mix the 2 depending upon what project I decide to do with it. This skein, which is a merino flax silk blend, and it is an unnamed colorway. This was, I think, one of her damaged goods. So Nest does damaged goods, and that's what this is. So that's just when sometimes like fiber maybe gets overhandled, maybe a little bit felted or something like that, but she sells them at a little bit of a discount. So I believe this was supposed to be one of her Christmas colorways, but because it was overhandled, she sold it just as a damaged goods colorway. So it kind of could go either way, like super springy or a little bit Christmassy. So I kind of like it for that. But this was my first time spinning flax, and that was a really interesting experience. I think I have a couple more bags of that blend in my stash. I don't know if I'm a huge fan, but I like the end result, so I guess I'll keep spinning it. And then I have this skein of wound up fiber arts, and this is the Everything is Awesome colorway, and I believe it's on superwash merino with sparkle, and the sparkle, oh my gosh, it got everywhere. I'm still finding sparkle everywhere. But it's a pretty yarn. I just don't know if I'll buy sparkle again. And then the last one is one more little mini skein from the set that keeps on giving, which is the Inglenook Fibers Polworth Silk set that was from the Tour de Fleece colorway session, the Mont St. Michael's from last year. So I'm almost done with this. I have 2.5 more to spin. I really haven't been spinning it since the last episode. I'm currently working on this color. So that pretty much wraps it up for what I've been working on. I think I'm gonna have a little bit more bandwidth over the next couple months to kind of branch out and work on more challenging things. I think over the past couple months, I've only been wanting to work on really easy stuff like stockinette, which is kind of why I picked this, this t-shirt and why I started the Metamorphic, is I just really wanted some easier things to work on. But I think now I kind of have a little bit more brain space to work on more challenging things such as the Eldora, finish that up. Hopefully just finish up the Damjakka because all I have is sleeves left. But I would also like to start a couple more Marie Wallin patterns. So one of the ones I'm thinking of is the Ulysse shrug, and I don't have a good picture near me right now. I thought I did, but it turns out I like to save ink, so I don't print the pictures typically. But it's part of her British Breeds box set. Say that 3 times fast. But it's just a little t-shirt pullover thing. And I just think it's really cute. The only thing that's not super cute is the 19 colors that are in the pattern. But I can work through that. And I have a lot of scraps of the British Breeds colorways because I've knit a pair of her socks now, and I've knit the Bramble sweater. So I'm hoping maybe I can just use some of those little scraps of colors to kind of cull the stash that way and not break into, you know, brand new skeins for a couple yards of yarn. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am happy to be back. I look forward to seeing your summer projects. Again, the hashtag for the knit along for the summer cal is down below. And if you're in the Southern Hemisphere, just think about how far ahead you are getting for next year. So if you like this video, please go ahead and hit the thumbs up and subscribe down below if you want to continue seeing more. Thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time, enjoy your knitting. Bye.